Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, Monday Night Football recap edition. Domonique, today we are going to do a playoff preview in place of winners and woofs. We're first going to talk about this Monday night game. However, when I first texted you about this, I thought it was going to be a dud of a game. So I was like, we'll get through this in like 10 minutes, maybe. It was not a dud. It was insane. The Broncos beat the Browns 41-32. Jameis Winston threw for so close to 500 yards, but he also had 171 interception return yards against him, which is basically the perfect Jameis Winston stat line. Jerry Jeudy had 235 receiving yards, which, as pointed out by Troy Aikman on the Broncos, this is an amazing stat, the most ever by a receiver facing his old team. So the ultimate revenge game stat. And yet the Broncos, led by Bo Nix, pulled out the win. Yeah. So much to discuss. Which team do you... I feel like we could talk about either team, and they're both really interesting in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get to the team that is possibly playoff bound. And so we probably should start with the Browns. And I mean, I feel like Jameis is the best quarterback to have if your season is over. Like, everyone seems so happy losing. Like, they're getting hyped for the game. They're so happy, and Jameis is so much fun, and he's going to turn it over. I saw I don't know if there's something that people actually, of all the stats that came out of this game that people are talking about. Another one was like he set a record for most combined yards of offensive passing and return yards, which I didn't know was something that we were keeping track of. I guess it's easy to go back and check if anyone else has beaten that, but like, it was amazing. But I guess it's no surprise to Jameis Winston, who also after the game said, "This isn't me." Yeah, Jameis, we know you better than you know you, because that is you.
He was like, the pick sixes are not.
Yeah. So when I imagine that you saw that he asked the Lord to deliver him away from pick sixes. Immediately after that, he said, "This isn't me." I was like, "Okay, sure, buddy."
This game was like if you took Jameis Winston and distilled him into the most concentrate, like
Jameis concentrate.
You like compacted him down to a single performance. That is outrageous. To your point about the Browns and why this felt fun, I mean, the receivers looked like they were having a blast out there. I think it was a good reminder that there are really good players on this Browns team. Some of these receivers, I thought, obviously Jeudy was unreal, and he's been now good for a bit on this offense, and they traded for him, and it's looking like a good trade. Although, I guess, given everything else, we'll talk about that in a second. But like Elijah Moore, I was like, oh my God, making some incredible plays out there. David Njoku is, I believe, like one of the better tight ends in the league. They weren't running the ball super well in this. They haven't been all season long. There's injuries on the offensive line. But I think, to your point, getting competent quarterback play shows you two things. One, you have good players on this offense. You have decent play callers, too, we should add. Ken Dorsey was the Bills' former offensive coordinator, showed him in the booth a couple times calling plays. Two, insane that they stuck with Deshaun Watson as long as they did. And that's not to say that Jameis Winston is like this, he's going to take them to the playoffs and he's the answer, but it was just it's like been given them yet again for the second season in a row, a perfect case study, a perfect control test for how unbelievably awful the offense was with their $200+ million quarterback.
Yeah, a quarterback away. So many teams, I guess it's two teams now, and the Browns and the Jets that thought they were a quarterback away and maybe are a quarterback away, but got the wrong quarterback. And so that situation there is one that is only going to get worse with time. The defense wasn't as good as we have come to expect that defense to be, but that is to be expected as things continue to go on with no particular hope. But there were some really impressive plays made through the course of that game defensively, even though they didn't shut down the Broncos in the way that you would expect a great defense to do.
So I guess that leads me to what's next, right? Jameis Winston is 31 years old. The Broncos financially, there's no, last I checked, real benefit for them from moving on from Deshaun Watson, but there's no reason for them to play him at this point. I think we can all safely say it's over. However, they decide to approach when to take that cap hit, how to spread it out. So they're up against it, right? They don't have a lot of money to spend at the quarterback position. My feeling is, and they're going to be picking probably in the top half of the draft, almost definitely. It's not a good quarterback draft. We're going to talk about that. My feeling is, without having a really strong sense of those quarterbacks and who might be a good fit, it would be, I think, a reasonable approach for them to see if they can get Winston back on short-term, reasonable, middle-class quarterback type deal and continue trying draft picks, seeing if someone sticks, because it's going to take them a while to get out from under that Watson contract.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a chance that I think funny enough, the Steelers would be an example you can look to where it's like maybe you could find someone that was an unusual situation that Russell Wilson became available, but like that would be an awesome opportunity. Maybe it's Justin Fields becomes available again, something like that combined with rookies. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess you signed Jameis, but Jameis to me doesn't feel like I feel like I'd rather have a lower ceiling, lower floor quarterback than Jameis, and might have, or at least someone who I felt like could follow instructions, which is like I would have said Russell Wilson isn't that guy, but he's turned into that guy, and maybe I would try to do something like that if I was their team, because you're right, they're gonna have to get lucky. They're gonna have to do a Brock Purdy situation. Like they're just gonna have to get lucky and find someone somewhere to make the best of this situation, because it is a really good roster, and hopefully Chubb will be a little bit healthier, and they'll kind of get that running game, that power running game that they lost back in O-line health. But yeah, they're gonna have to get lucky at quarterback in order to make this build worthwhile, which it was a really, really impressive build.
Um, Well, I mean, look, the quarterback on the other side was picked 12th overall. He was
Yeah.
not one of the first 4 quarterbacks taking the draft. The Broncos are winning with him. We're going to get to Bo Nix. I do want to say, like I said, middle class for Jameis Winston. I think that's too rich. You
Yeah.
want probably to give him or whoever a contract sort of similar to what like the Raiders gave Gardner Minshew, right? Which I believe was below $15 million a year. There's going to be
It's tough.
competition for his services, though, which is crazy to say. Although if Sam Darnold hits the market as well, there'll be a couple of interesting options. I don't know. I don't know what the Vikings are going to do there. That's an interesting
Yeah.
case, too.
I mean, Danny Dimes will be available potentially, but yeah, I mean, there'll be guys there, but it's no one you're going to be excited about, and all of those guys will be more expensive, I think, than the Browns will feel comfortable spending on position. They're going to have to hit in the draft or find some sort of backup and get lucky, like the situation with Justin Fields or Russell Wilson.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think, though, this team. They've shown you that this team is too good to just call it a lost season.
Right.
You're going to have to do sort of that halfway rebuild / compete, retool, I think is the parlance that I've heard NFL teams use, and see if you could just keep trying answers at the quarterback position until you're in a better financial position, or if you have the draft pick, or if there's a guy in this draft that you fall in love with, which could happen. Again, I have not really spent a ton of time thinking about those quarterbacks yet, but nevertheless, it's been clarifying, but last year was clarifying too. So
Yeah, well, it doesn't need to be any more clear now. You don't have a choice now. Like he's hurt, so
that's
we're
right.
done.
Okay, so let's go to the other side of the ball, because we can kind of talk about the Browns' defense a little bit in this one. Oh boy, this was a really interesting performance from Bo Nix, and I went into this game hoping for more clarity on who he is, where his ceiling is, and I'm not sure I came away with that. I want to start by saying this, though, because I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about Bo Nix on the show. Compared to what we saw week 1 against Seattle, night and day. And that alone should be immensely encouraging for Broncos fans. Just in terms of, you still see a little bit of intermittent accuracy struggles throwing downfield, but certainly not like week 1. He is hitting on a few, I mean, some of the third downs he hit in this game,
Yeah.
particularly on the game-winning drive. Obviously, the ball to Mims was beautiful. Um, when they got, it
Whew.
was like,
Yeah, the
yeah,
97-yarder, that was incredible. And
perfect
Denzel
ball.
Ward, a little too aggressive, but it worked out.
What were they in? They were in like a inverted Tampa 2,
Yeah.
right? So, but
And,
Denzel Ward
and
was playing the safety. Yeah. Well, how do you feel
yeah.
about that call there? I mean,
Yeah,
they're
I
back
mean,
at the goal line. I was shocked that
yeah.
Peyton let him throw that.
Yeah, I don't mind that call. It's like a pretty good disguise play, and I guess they ran it enough times that he wasn't surprised by it. But that is a play. That's a decision that I think you make early. Like that's not reading. That's like, oh, we're gonna have this, and so like that. I don't mind having them in that situation. Denzel's got to be better, and I mean, it's the thing we talk about these defenses that are so multiple and how flexible their players are, and how that makes them good. And this is an example of why it's so rare and it's so difficult because a normal safety is not allowing that to happen. I thought the middle linebacker ran with it well enough to put some air under it, and Denzel just went for the ball and missed it altogether.
My thought on Bo Nix in the preseason, we did like a talk about the rookie quarterbacks after we got our first glimpse at them, was I'm not sure where his ceiling is, but I feel that his floor is high enough for Sean Payton, who I still believed in, to create a productive and functional offense. And I think that has been borne out. My question for you is, when you watch him, what are you liking and what do you still have questions about?
Yeah, I mean, I still have the biggest question is what's the ceiling? Like, I don't, or I guess the ceiling isn't the right question. It's like, what's his average? Like, what can we come to expect from him? And he's a rookie quarterback. So I think that's a good thing to remember is like, he's still very early in his development, even though he's older. And he's had a lot of starts. He's still a rookie quarterback, and Sean Payton is going to help him continue to develop. But what jumps out to me is that it does feel like the floor is much higher than the average rookie, and that's something to be encouraged by.
Yeah.
And he's gotten better at certain parts of his game. And there's a lot of things that and this is maybe a bigger, broader conversation for another time, but generally, there are things that we accept to be true about sports or about all types of stuff that hardly ever change, but some of those things do change. And I feel like one of the things I always kind of believed is like you can't really improve accuracy. And it feels like there's enough proof out there that it's possible to do. And and I think that that's the biggest problem that jumps out for me going forward is like that consistent downfield accuracy, which I would have said like, that's going to be a limiting factor for him going forward. But I don't know. We've seen the two most obvious examples most recently, of course, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, who like these guys have turned into really accurate quarterbacks. And I know that it's not enough to completely believe that it's something can be done, but that's enough times in recent history to think for me not to say that it's impossible, which I thought it was before.
Yeah, I think also that question of accuracy to me watching Knicks is going to be like, it's not one where we're watching him and we're saying, okay, can he be accurate enough to be functional? Because he already is
Yeah,
clearly hit that bar. So now it's like, okay, if we want to start thinking about him like as a really good, like a plus quarterback,
right.
can he consistently hit on those throws? I think a lot of it stems from what he does with his feet. I mean, I'm not a mechanics expert, but
Right.
when you watch him, and Troy talked about this a little bit during the game, he does bail a lot and he gets happy feet. But when he
Yeah.
does settle down, you saw on the third minutes, but certainly later in the game, that's when he starts hitting some of those throws. And a lot of the movement is by design. I mean, they put him on the move constantly, right? This offense
Yeah.
is like the boots, the sprint outs. And he's good at throwing on the move, and you see why that they do it. But I think for him to kind of take that next leap, and for us to feel like, okay, he's maybe not, the top 10 quarterback or top 5 quarterback, but certainly in that half, it's going to be like, can he keep consistently winning from the pocket and making accurate throws over 10 yards from inside? And I think, it's a work in progress, Domonique, right?
Right.
Like they're going to ask him to do it a little bit more. The fact that Peyton asked him to do that in that moment, I thought was as
Yeah.
encouraging as the fact that
That
he
was
actually executed upon it.
Yeah, I mean, you always ask good questions, and sometimes, most of the time, they like lead to something that I thought, but I didn't know how to articulate. This time it's led to me wanting to go back and watch all of his throws, his errant throws, because what I'm realizing as we talk more about accuracy is there can be a few different reasons. One of them can be mechanics, another one can be eyes, and I think there's a third one that we haven't talked about, and I would say is probably the one that I would attribute most to Lamar Jackson's improvement in accuracy is comfort.
Yeah.
And it's like it's really hard to read a defense and then have proper mechanics. It's a lot easier, and we've talked about this a bunch of times that I think everyone believes quarterbacks are reading while the play is happening, or most people believe that. And I think it's true sometimes, but oftentimes quarterbacks recognize the coverage pre-snap and recognize where they need to go with the ball, and then all the looking around and misdirection is window dressing in order to set up the throw that you know you're going to make. So if you know that you're going to look right, turn left, and fire to a guy at the top of the numbers 10 yards down the field, it's easier than if you snap the ball and you look right and he's covered. Then you look left and try to find someone who's open and then set up and throw the ball. So I think that I'd be interested to go back and watch if I were to predict how well his actually could improve. And I wonder which of all these issues are the issues that are more easily fixed, and which ones are the ones that explain why he's had these problems.
The other thing that jumped out to me watching the offense was we'll talk about the Broncos defense in a second, but but both these defenses played a ton of man coverage, and they were both like playing like right. I'm sure you loved it, like right on the line
Yeah.
in this game. I love that there was a lot of no calls, which I was
Yeah.
applauding
Yes,
from home because
please.
guys were like right, and these
Yeah.
two defenses probably play the most man coverage in the NFL, right? Would be my guess, or top 4 or 5. This Broncos offense is a lot better versus zone than man. That was the one thing that actually did remind me a little bit from the Seattle game, because Seattle they pivoted to playing like a ton of man coverage in that game because they were like, oh, you guys aren't going to beat us downfield. And when the Browns did play man coverage in this, they held Knicks down pretty well. I pulled it out of curiosity. 3 for 13 for 30 yards, 2 interceptions, and a passer rating of 0. When they played zone is when he was able to carve them up. That's not all on Knicks, to be clear.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
bringing that up.
Cortland
That's
Sutton
why
is not really a route you up type of guy, but anyway.
100%. And they don't, yeah. So there were some drops too. This is more just a statement about the offense as we project for them going forward. I would play a decent amount of man coverage against this group. I also thought that so I've talked about the Broncos offensive line being excellent. Myles Garrett did not look right in this game. I think he's got like some kind of foot injury, I believe is what I saw. And it was pretty obvious watching. So the Browns really weren't able to get a ton of pressure, which has been the other thing that I think sometimes Knicks has struggled with this year. But for the most part, he's not under pressure very much because this Broncos offensive line, absolutely, one, he's getting rid of the ball quicker. And 2, this Broncos offensive line is really good, Domonique.
Yeah.
One of the better blocking units in the entire NFL.
Yeah, and that offensive line, I do think that that's another thing that we should talk about when we discuss how well Bo Nix has done. Is you're going to get the best version of every quarterback when you protect him. He still oddly, which I guess maybe it's just his nature, but he oddly has, like you mentioned earlier, has a little bit of a happy feet issue where it feels like he's bailing pockets before they need to be bailed, even though he should be comfortable to having some sort of coverage. But yeah, that offensive line was great, and it helps when you're not getting the best version of Myles Garrett. We talk about the Eagles being a team that thrives, or at least like the center of their power defensively is their secondary. I really think that it's, even though the Browns have a good secondary, their power emanates from the fact that Myles Garrett and at one point Zadarius Smith, those guys were kind of unblockable.
Yeah. All right. Sticking with the Broncos, Riley Moss apparently was the glue guy holding this entire Broncos defense together. Domonique, oh my God, right? Because he goes out. Levi Wallace is sorry, man. But they were,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, James was
the one big touchdown the one big touchdown that he gave up was really unfortunate. It was like looked like zero coverage. And the funny thing is,
talking about.
I'm sorry.
right?
What you say?
The Judy post is what you're talking about,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a normal. I mean, an enormous touchdown. Judy hit the post, and so my rookie year, we played almost all zero coverage, and so we practiced how to play zero. And the important thing that you have to understand when you're playing zero is if you run it properly, if you execute the blitz well, there is not enough time to throw intermediate routes. You can either throw quick game or throw deep balls because it actually takes more time for a dig or a skinny post or something like that to develop, or an out or a hitch, or excuse me, a stop or something. It takes more time for those to develop. It seemed that Levi was only guarding the intermediate routes, which is like we would line up and it's like we don't move for like a second because we're reading if it's going to be quick game, and then if it's not quick game, we get deep. And he did the opposite. He just backed up and just like there, which it was really he was like flat footed. It was almost like he was surprised, like he thought he had some safety help where it was a different call. It was like mind blowing.
I'm going to say something that you're not going to love, which is this game for me was a reminder of why a stud cornerback can only have so much impact on a game.
Yeah.
Because I have to think Riley Moss is probably one of the more targeted corners in football this year because he plays opposite Patrick Surtain, and he has been fantastic this season. And that's a huge the Broncos. I think what we saw last night have two very good quarterbacks on their roster. One didn't play, and I really believe like that was the biggest difference. I mean, Jameis got the ball out pretty quickly to negate some of their rush. Nick Bonito, who was amazing and is amazing. I mean, the play he made where he tipped the ball. I mean, watching him too, he's so slender. I thought it was like a DB blitzing, and I was like, no, that's Nick Bonito. And that's a big part of why he's so fast. He's great. But I just think you really saw, wow, this style of defense, which is very aggressive, plays a ton of man coverage. You really need more than one good cornerback to pull this off.
I'm surprised that makes you. I guess your point is, it feels like you could come to the opposite conclusion based on what you viewed. But that's your point. Is your point is having one isn't as good. But as someone who's been in the shoes that Riley Moss wore, where it's a young cornerback in Denver with Champ Bailey on the other side, it's like, yeah, you're going to get a lot of attention. The thing that shocked me about my time in Denver and would shock me about this situation is give them some help.
Yeah.
Dare them to throw. And we didn't do that either, which is like, I think defensive coordinators sometimes get stubborn. And rather than, I think they want to double guys who deserve to be doubled. They don't like to double guys who don't deserve to be doubled. So, and rather than think of, this corner needs help, they think this receiver is a problem. And in a situation like that, I'd be like, look, we're going to tilt our coverage this way, and we are going to dare you to throw it at Patrick Surtain.
Do you think they go into this game thinking, yeah, Judy, he's not going to give us problems?
Absolutely.
We saw him in practice. He's not. We traded him for a reason.
Absolutely. I definitely think that some personal bias or emotional attachment got into that, because there's no reason not to, especially after he had 230, Mina Kimes.
230. Can I just say, I loved Judy in college, so this was actually
I did too
for me. Like he's really talented.
Yeah. I liked him in college too, and it's kind of sucked the way things have gone, and like people in media have been like oddly extra critical of him, and he's been like capping back a little bit, and it's like it's nice just to have him ball out and show to the home fans or to his former home fans. It's pretty cool.
A revenge game stat. All right, that's probably it for the Browns this year, but we will be discussing. The Broncos are going to come up after the break because we're going to drop our way too early playoff preview picks. I'm excited to see what Domonique has. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words, Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer. Hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. We are, instead of doing winners and woofs, doing our playoff preview picks with quite a few games remaining in the season. However, the picture. Well, I'll say this actually. A few weeks ago, a few weeks ago, I thought, I'm pretty sure I know the one seeds are, and
Yeah.
not so fast, my friend. And this is a good thing for football fans because as I was going through the ESPN playoff predictor and like
Mhm.
toggling with who wins what, I genuinely believe every single race is going to matter until the very end, which is awesome, right? Like, I don't think I think one seed is going to be up in the air, which is phenomenal, and the end of the bottom of
Yeah.
the brackets. So that's a good thing.
I'm interested. I'm interested in seeing your one seeds mostly because I think that you, like me, are not sold on the current one seeds in the way that I think most of us are. But I also have another question for you because I think of you as like very structured and like principled in your preparation. And so I was wondering how, because the playoff predictor, you can go through week by week and choose who wins and
Yeah,
who
every game.
loses.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of toggles here and there, but I was mainly going on vibes. It's like, yeah, I know this team is going to win. They're not going to win all 4 or 5 of their games left. They're going to win so many. So I'll go through and pick a guess. But like, I feel like you probably had a little more attention to detail than that.
I picked every game and I wrote down my picks. I mean, we're not going to go through them in exhaustive
Right.
detail,
But I mean,
but
there's some games that I think are important games
yeah,
to find out
there's
what
some
you think about them.
Thursday night football, which brings me, I guess, to the NFC. Let's start here because Thursday night
Okay.
football is massive. We're going to preview this game in detail on my Week 14 preview pod. But I spent a second thinking about this one, Dominique, and a couple of other. I mean, the Bills and Lions are playing. That's a huge one. So I thought a little bit about some of the bigger
Yeah.
games, Ravens Steelers rematch.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's how I ended up in the NFC. I wrote down all my picks. You can look at them.
Nice, nice, nice.
Eagles 1, Lions 2. I have them tying with 15-2 records, but
Yep.
because
We're
of
the
conference
same.
matchups, I've got the Eagles coming out on top. The Seahawks are 3. This is the one I struggled with the most. The NFC West, I think, is absolutely unpickable. We can talk about that. And then I've got Vikings, Packers, Commanders. Do you have so let me know yours and then we can get into
Yeah,
it.
so I got Eagles, Lions, Buccaneers, Seahawks,
Bucks.
Packers, which feels unfair. Packers, Vikings, Washington.
Okay, so
Do
the
I have the
same.
Seahawks higher than you? Is that what happened?
No, I have the Seahawks higher than you. I have
Okay.
the NFC South finishing 4th. The
Yeah.
NFC South and the NFC West are just absolutely disgusting right now. Um, let's talk about the Eagles first. So, a big part of the reason why I ended up here is just schedule. I didn't
Hmm.
realize, but the Lions have a much harder schedule. And I only gave them 1L, but I have the Eagles winning out, which you do too, because the Eagles have
Right.
the Panthers, the Steelers, the Commanders, the Cowboys, the Giants. I mean, the Steelers are the one team that I think could really give them trouble. But I think that Eagles defense, which I'm just absolutely in love with, Dominique, is going
Yeah.
to give the Pittsburgh Steelers offense a lot of trouble.
I think it might have been 2 or 3 weeks ago on my show. Speaking of way too early things, you and I did a way too early NFC Championship matchup for the Eagles and the Lions. And that was the week when I decided that I'm switching from the Lions are the best team in football to the Eagles are the best team in football. And they've done nothing to dissuade me of that opinion. They probably made me feel more strongly about that opinion. Now, it's the NFL, so like they're better than all the teams they're going to play. They should beat all the teams that they're going to play. They might lose one just because it's the NFL, but they to me seem like they're the best team in football right now.
I feel the same way watching them, which is it's a little bit. I'm trying not to be guilty of recency bias, but in recent
Right.
weeks they've beaten really good teams. This defense has been tested, and it's just when you watch them, you see it fundamentally. They're so sound. They're so good at everything, and yeah, I just the offense. It's a load. But again, this is about schedule, right? Because
Yeah.
the Lions have. I mentioned the Eagles' very easy schedule outside of the Steelers. That would be the one I would keep an eye on. That would bring them. But if they go undefeated, the Lions can't lose a game. And I think they will because they have the Packers, the Bills, the Bears, the Niners, the Vikings. Packers, Bills, Vikings. I'm looking at. I'm thinking, man, 3-0 in those feels like a lot to ask of this team.
Yeah, I mean the Vikings was a coin toss game. Like it was a pick 'em essentially the way they played, and the Vikings had the lead in the closing minutes of that game, and you could argue outplayed the Lions in that game. So like that's a game that they could absolutely lose. The Packers are playing as well as just about anybody right about now. It's a game that they could absolutely lose. Those things, and then of course the Bills are have Josh
Are
Allen,
you?
so that's a losable game.
I'm really high on the Eagles, and I'm really high on the Packers.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the Jordan Love Toyota-thon theory?
Uh-uh.
Okay. It has been pointed out, I don't know where it started, maybe TikTok or something, that last year, before and after Toyota-thon, Jordan Love turned into a different quarterback. You could explain it by him, it being his first year, playing with young receivers or whatnot. I choose to believe the Toyota-thon theory because Domonique, first part of this season, Jordan Love, granted he was injured, missed some games, coming back from the injury, a lot of ups and downs. The last time that Green Bay played Detroit was before Toyota-thon began. Since Toyota-thon started this year, only been 3
Oh
games,
gosh.
Jordan Love is first in EPA per dropback, first in yards per dropback, first in touchdown percentage, fourth in QBR.
Can
The
I ask
Lions
a
are
question?
running into Jordan Love at the wrong time because Toyota-thon is here.
Oh man, I love when you do this. By the way, this is nothing like anything that I would think you would buy into. But I need a little bit more clarification. Does he do like Toyota commercials? Is there some connection? There's nothing. So
He should.
this is tantamount to like Venus is in retrograde type of stuff. Like there's I thought that it was
You
going
don't
to be
hear the
kind of
numbers
like
that I gave you? I gave you some really specific.
this is okay. So all right, you've opened this door. Then the Ravens don't run the ball enough. They would win more if they ran the ball. That has actually more bearing on the game than this Toyota-thon foolishness. I thought you were gonna do like Kyler Murray, like the game came out, so he's spending more time on that, or like this commercial allows him to focus for some reason. I don't know. It's just Toyotas are selling more, guys. He's better.
Literally since it began, he has been the best quarterback in football. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. All right, that's it for. So we both have the Eagles and Lions. So let's talk about the NFC West because this is the division that I struggled with the most. I mean, they all play each other.
Yeah.
The Seahawks have a tough schedule. They have the Cardinals, the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, the Rams. I gave them 2 losses.
Right. Me too.
But I had them beating their divisional opponents. This Cardinals Seahawks game this weekend is really, I think, going to be a massive, and then potentially that final Rams game. This basically comes down to who beats each other. I think because again, like I had them losing to both the Packers and the Vikings and being the Bears. You had the Seahawks too. So I assume that means you think that they're going to beat the Cardinals. Is there anything you're seeing from them that gives you confidence? Because I feel like this division is like pretty much a crapshoot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we feel the same way. Like it feels a bit like a crapshoot. I think the Seahawks are steadily improving, and I think that's like the general. And that could also just be another version of recency bias. But I think that's why, like, I feel better about the direction that they are heading because of how, in the story around their defense that we all kind of expected. We talked about this last time. Is like we knew the defense was going to take some time to get going, and now that it is getting going, it's getting better. And I think that's why I'm like, all right, I like the way this ship is headed. I'm going to, I think, give the slight edge to them. But yeah, I got the same thing. 2 more losses for them.
Okay. I'm going to really get into detail in the Cardinals Seahawks game this week because it is really, one of those biggest playoff swing type games.
Right.
So you had the Bucks, I had the Falcons. So
Yeah.
I assume that means because the Bucks have to win a lot because the Falcons beat them in 2 games this year. So tell me what what you're expecting for them and why.
Well, I think it's more a knock on the Falcons than it is tremendous love for the Bucks. But I do think that what happened, and again, recency bias could be in all the stats that come out about how much Kurt Warner, geez, he's not that old. How much Kirk Cousins, how much it appears that his body is betraying him. Like I think
Yeah.
it's a quarterback league, and if he can't run, and I think there was like velocity on his passes tracked also that was like lower and everything like that is what it comes down to. And uh, yeah, I have them falling behind. I got the Bucks at 10-7, and the Falcons ending up at 8-9.
So I have the Falcons 9-8. For me, it's just schedule because they got the
Yeah.
Raiders, the Giants, the Commanders, who I give them a loss, and the Panthers. But like the Raiders and the
I,
Panthers are
yeah,
spicy.
I think
So
it was the Panthers game for me. I think that I
oh,
was like, nah, I'm gonna
Bryce
get my
Young.
man Bryce. And again, yeah, it's vibes. Like I'm gonna get my man Bryce. He's been playing hard, coming close in these games. He deserves the win. His luck's gonna go in his favor in this game.
I am. Have you ever seen a player who feels like everyone is rooting for more than Bryce Young right now?
Um, damn it! Why did the guy's name slip my head? It's less fun now that I can't remember his name. That's really sad. The safety that died. This is not fun anymore.
Uh, DeMar Hamlin.
There we go. There we go. We got
Really
it.
well, by the way.
Uh,
Yeah, I know. It's like okay. With the Jameis thing, I, I have not enjoyed the like, hey, wow, what a great character. We love his like. I'm talking about in a football context, but it is amazing
right.
how the ant-like memories that appears are people have. I am very much enjoying that everybody seems to be like openly and just unabashedly rooting for Bryce Young to have success,
It's
including
fun.
myself. Um, one more quick question about the Falcons before we move on. There's really nothing to say. Vikings, Packers, Commanders. It seems like pretty likely because no one else is going to
Yeah.
come for a wild card. It's just going to be a division. But one more question about the Falcons. On NFL Live yesterday, we talked about Kirk's. I mean, the amazing thing, the Falcons defense played well against the Chargers. They got pressure, and they still lost because of Kirk's interceptions, which came in a
hmm
variety of flavors. I posited this, and I was surprised by the amount of pushback I've gotten from some Falcons fans. Seems to me like why not just roll with Penix? Because at best, your chance is squeaking into the playoffs and getting bounced. You picked Penix 8th overall. I didn't like the pick, but I really won't like it if you don't think it's a good a good idea to give your 24-year-old, almost 25-year-old, incredibly experienced. This is not a Jordan Love situation. This is not a Trey Lance. I mean, am I crazy, Dominique? Like, what would you do if you were the Atlanta Falcons? Because I know it's hard because they've
Yeah.
won.
I mean, I think the question that you have to ask yourself is, can we win the Super Bowl this year with Kirk Cousins? I think if you know the answer,
You win a
yeah,
playoff.
I think, yeah, if you, and I guess maybe it's not even a Super Bowl because it's kind of weird to make it zero sum. It's like how far do you think you can go with Kirk Cousins, and is it worth it? And he's had some games this year that would get you excited, and I think that's the hope.
The Bucks
The
twice.
Yeah, the best thing about Penix is that the ceiling could be high. It could be high. Like he has an arm. Yeah, I don't get the argument for not moving on. I guess the only argument I get is like maybe don't throw him out there against the Vikings, but there's no reason not to put him out there very soon to me.
Actually, looking at that schedule that I just ripped off, it seems like a great. They got to buy.
Yeah.
All right, AFC. I got another surprise at the top. Da 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 da! The Buffalo Bills steal the 1 seed from the Kansas City Chiefs. Then I'm going Steelers, Texans, Ravens, Chargers, Broncos. What do you got, Dominique?
First of all, why'd you put question marks? Like you didn't know? Like you put question marks next to the Bills?
That's like the
Like,
people's reaction to this. I'm
oh, okay,
the
that's the
people like,
parentheses.
what?
Oh,
What?
yeah. Despite the fact that I've been very dubious, I guess, of
For a
how
while.
deep the Chiefs can go in this playoffs, I kept them at the 1 seed. I think the Bills will be 14-3, and the Chiefs will be 15-2. After that, it's the Steelers I got next, and then the Texans, and then Baltimore, Chargers, and the
Okay,
Broncos
so the same, yeah.
sneaking in that final spot.
All right, so let's focus on this Bills Chiefs dynamic because mostly
Mhm.
we're the same. So I have them both tying at 14-3, and then it comes down
Right.
to conference or I think head to heads. I forgot. I looked at the results, but point is the playoff machine says if they tied at the Bills,
Yeah,
so the Chiefs. So that means the Bills would lose one game. I have them losing to the Lions. The two games that are tricky are the Rams and the Lions. Then they get the Pats, Jets, Pats. The Chiefs would have to lose two games from the Chargers, the Browns, the Texans, the Steelers, the Broncos. I had them losing to the Chargers and the Steelers,
yeah,
which it might not happen,
yeah.
but you were more dubious of the Chiefs than me for a while. I clung on to everything's fine, everything's ever fine, everything's fine. I understand that they made some kind of deal with the devil, and we'll probably find out about it in 30 years because of the way that they're winning.
Yeah,
But fundamentally, like there are some really, I think what struck me the most, Domonique, is not just the offensive tackle situation, which is really impacting the offense, but like you're really starting to see cracks in this defense on the back end.
that's the thing. Yeah, I think the DJ Humphreys health can address the tackle situation, and that could lead to like better offense overall if you protect Patrick Mahomes. So like that single position has been so detrimental, and so like they moved Tooney out the guard to play tackle at some point because Patrick was so disgusted by the performance. So it's been so bad there that yes, one player coming back from injury could change that. But you're right. The defense is when we create these scenarios that are based largely on the fact that they did it last year of the Chiefs winning, it's based on them still having a top of the league defense. And they don't have that right now. And I
Yeah.
think that is very much reason to be concerned about them making a run.
I'll be curious to see if Charles Omenihu, when he comes back, he's practicing what kind of impact when he's healthy he has on this pass rush. The Steelers game, that's one where like I said, I picked the Chargers and the Steelers as their losses, but Broncos is not a sure thing. That pass rush, that defense, who in the hell knows what's going on with the Texans? I have the Texans losing 3 games and still getting into the playoffs. Steelers Ravens is interesting because
Right.
I had them both finishing 12-5, and then
Yep.
the Ravens, probably the Steelers winning because they, in my estimation, beat the Raiders, who the Ravens lost to, so they have that head to head, and then the Chiefs. So I have the Steelers losing to the Ravens and still getting in if they beat the Chiefs. Now,
We
if the Steelers pardon me, yes, if that happens, that really makes Christmas interesting.
I think we have the same predictions for all around that. Is I do think the Steelers will beat the Chiefs. I do think the Ravens will be 12-5, and the Steelers will be 12-5, and the Steelers will get that division. And yeah, I also like the way it shook out. Even if I think that it's going to happen differently, I still think we get to a place where the Ravens are the wild card and the Steelers win the division, in part because of like the inconsistency of the Ravens. So I think we got to it the same way, but I don't know that it'll work out that way. The Chiefs obviously could go ahead and beat the Steelers, and it could. I still think they end up tied, but the Steelers take the division.
I actually had the Colts also finishing 9-8, but the Texans having the head-to-head advantage.
Yeah,
Um,
I do
yeah.
too. 9-8 Colts, Texans. Yeah,
And then the Dolphins are the other just missed team at you just can't rack
7 and
enough.
9.
Yeah, they got some tough games. Um, they really needed to win that Packers game, I feel like.
And maybe this is just my again with me trying to reconcile some of the feelings that I have with the Chiefs, but I don't think the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl without the first round bye. In my situation, they
Mm,
do get the first round
yeah.
bye, and one of the questions we ended up not doing it on first take, but it was actually a pretty good first take question that they presented in the email last night was, is it more likely for the Chiefs to be one and done or win the Super Bowl? And I said one and done, but that changes, I guess, if I don't think they get the bye.
So yeah, right. So let's say they don't get the bye, because if they get the bye, I think we would both say the Super Bowl. If they don't get the bye, they're 2, which means they face the Broncos.
Right.
I,
Which I was actually thinking the other way around, that them having the bye might
Oh,
make, which is a weird situation. Is
oh,
like,
because they would
yeah,
face these like this did. So yeah,
they
right.
would
Like
end up playing probably one of the. Well, they end up. No, actually, they would end up playing Houston or somebody like that. Houston or Baltimore or somebody like that, which is tough. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question though, generally.
it is tough because as much as we doubt the Chiefs, I still have belief in their ability to handle at least half of these teams. I
Yeah,
think that the Bills are a better football team though,
yeah,
so that's why I'm a
I
little bit
agree.
hesitant about the Super Bowl right now. But yeah, it's all just saying doing this exercise made me really excited for the end of the season because there's a lot of really huge, meaningful games. Every weekend, there's at least one game that's like, this is for this weekend Packers, Lions, Cardinals, Seahawks. And then I actually think everything's going to matter until week 18 because these races are going down to the wire, really because of the rise of the Eagles and the Bills, honestly.
Yep.
Like, because this felt like Chiefs Lions was my preseason Super Bowl prediction. And look, I still think the Lions are incredible, and I am not sure if if it's Lions Eagles as it feels faded.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to go. I'm going to have to, have a think. But those two teams have made this really interesting, Dominique, because
Yeah.
they're really good.
It's just funny how these things change because I think with all the exodus in Buffalo, we thought that this was not going to
Yeah.
be their best chance. And also like just the AFC in general is not nearly as good as we thought. So like while I'm looking at the Chiefs and saying this isn't a team that matches their record, I then look around at the rest of the teams in AFC while I'm saying they're not going to make it to and
Yeah.
win the Super Bowl. I'm like, actually, they could beat all these teams.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I think they will, but they certainly could.
Yeah. And like the AFC East is a lot worse than people thought. I think the AFC West is a lot better than everyone thought it would be. So competition certainly matters. That's it for today. I will be, I assume, joining Dominique's podcast, Domonique Foxworth Show,
Yes.
later this week. Don't know what we're talking about. But in the meantime, I will be back on Thursday morning with a preview of some of the games that I hinted at. And I'm excited to do that.